Hello folks, this is Harris Sultan, and the good news keeps on piling up. As you guys know, our fellow Islamists, Sharia enforcers, Sharia daydreamers, Muslim propagandists, whatever you want to call them, for the first time, they are scared. And on the surface, it seems like our politicians might be getting serious about dealing with the problem. As I've been trying to consistently tell you, that Islamists played their hand way too soon. They thought that they had enough numbers to shake things up, but in reality they had enough to be a nuisance, but not enough to make a real change. As I showed you a couple of videos ago, our favorite Islamist in Britain, Silly Dilly Dude, casually discussing how to overthrow internationally recognized governments and replace them with Sharia. He did not like that video. He tried to take the video down, and he wrote to YouTube that I was only academically discussing how to enforce Sharia in internationally recognized governments. Unluckily for him and luckily for me, I know a thing or two about how YouTube algorithm or processes work. When you play a video for commentary purposes, it is covered under what we call the fair use policy. So without me even lifting a finger, YouTube turned down his request, and the video is still on. And he's not happy about this. Now, I don't know who is watching my videos. I don't know if it is us or other influencers like us, or every single one of you who are trying to alert our politicians that this menace needs to be controlled. We've seen cases of former Hamas leadership organizing protests in the name of pro-Palestine, when in reality they are pro-Hamas protesters, intimidating, harassing British citizens who happen to be Jews or on Israel's side.
Leave it.
Regardless of what side you're on, in a Western, secular, liberal democracy, you have a right to protest peacefully without intimidating or provoking or harassing your opponents. But this is a concept totally alien to these Islamists, because they grow up with a mentality that anyone who disagrees with you, you gotta take care of them violently if the need may be. So ever since October 7 terrorist attack took place, these Islamists thought that they are going to teach Israel a lesson, and at the same time they're going to harass and intimidate everyone who stands with Israel. My stance has been very clear since October 7, that Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel is a modern state that has a right to exist, and any terrorist organization that wants to wipe Israel off the map deserves a retaliation. Yes, we have some useful idiots in the West who have fallen for the propaganda of Hamas, powered by Islamist diaspora living in our Western countries. But due to the inaction of our politicians, these Islamists kept getting more and more brazen with each passing day. Initially, they tried not to openly support Hamas, but when they realized that nothing is happening, they can actually get away with a lot. And because they weren't pushed back, they became more and more brazen. They kept pushing the boundary ever so slightly. We saw how these Islamists initially celebrated October 7 terrorist attacks when Hamas brutally butchered 1,200 Israeli civilians.
Live from Greenacre.
Weaving through traffic on Waterloo Road with Palestinian flags waving. A rallying cry echoing from Greenacre to Lakemba.
Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free!
There, a crowd hundreds strong gathered in response to attacks half a world away. Islamic leaders addressed the crowd.
I'm smiling and I'm happy! I'm elated! It's a day of courage! It's a day of happiness! It's a day of pride! It's a day of victory!
And when Israel retaliated, they immediately became the world's greatest humanists and started saying, oh, the poor Palestinian civilians. That would have had worked had they not thrown in their support for Hamas. You would have had a moral high ground if you were only speaking about Palestinian civilian casualties. But people like us, we know how their mind works. For them, it's okay to inflict casualties on Israeli citizens, but when Israel retaliates and tries to take out Hamas, and in the process, unfortunately, a lot of Palestinians died, that cannot happen. And as I have made this case plenty of times on this channel before, that they don't care about Palestinian lives. They care about their political cause, which is capturing Jerusalem and wiping Israel off the map because they cannot see Jewish people having a homeland. How many times Piers Morgan asked these Islamists, do you condemn Hamas?
Will you now take the opportunity to condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th? I only ask you one more time.
And instead of condemning Hamas, they actually started throwing their support for Hamas, calling them freedom fighters. And at the same time, totally ignoring every single Palestinian who was protesting against Hamas, who were not happy with Hamas's actions. They were totally silent about them. Yes, according to Palestinians' own survey, 37% of Palestinians are not happy with Hamas. 17% of Palestinians even consider Hamas's actions as criminal. And of course, we have seen plenty of Palestinians expressing their hatred towards Hamas. But these guys don't say anything about those Palestinians. Because again, as I said, it's not about Palestinian casualties. It's about the Islamic fetish of wiping Israel off the map, reducing Jews as dhimmis, and capturing Jerusalem. That's it. So we wondered, how long is this going to go on? How long our politicians are not going to take any action against them? How long the Met Police is going to have this two-tiered policing system where they go really hard on native British people and go really, really soft on these pro-Hamas protesters?
You need to come down, sir.
As it turns out, the Met Police is actually afraid of these pro-Hamas supporters. Not just because they would be accused of racism and Islamophobia, but literally scared for their own safety. We've seen plenty of times that whenever the Met Police tried to deal with these protesters, they were violently pushed back. These Islamist protesters would cover up their faces, they would hide their identity, and that would make it difficult for the Met Police to identify these Islamists and arrest them. So finally, it seems like the noose is really, really tightening around the necks of these Islamists. We have already got laws against desecrating war memorials and monuments, hiding your identity, being a nuisance, turning protests into riots. We've already got laws against that. But these laws were created with general public in mind. Generally, people have been getting more and more civilized in Western countries in recent decades. But there is one community that doesn't play by the rules, that doesn't respect Western laws. And they thought that, to hell with your laws, to hell with your values, we're gonna do whatever we want to do. So they started desecrating British war memorials. They started harassing, intimidating, and provoking their opponents. And when told to behave themselves, they even attacked the Met Police. So we kept wondering, when are our politicians going to enforce British laws? When is the Met Police going to take action against them? The Met Police has been so incompetent in dealing with these Islamist propagandists that British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was forced to say this.
Since the October 7th attacks in Israel, we've seen protests across our country almost every weekend. Many of these have been respectful, but there have also been far too many appalling examples of anti-Semitism, violent intimidation, and the glorification of terrorism. This must not stand. I've asked the police what powers they need to bring order to our streets. As a result, today, we are setting out measures that will ban fireworks and flares that intimidate communities and have put our police officers in hospital. Stop people from being able to climb on our sacred war memorials, and stop people from covering their faces to conceal their identity and evade arrest. Those who abuse their freedom to protest undermine public safety and our democratic values, and I will give police the powers they need to crack down on this intimidating and appalling behavior.
Values, that's the key word. This is a war of values. These people have different values, we have different values. Western, secular, democratic, liberal values need to be enforced on these people. If you don't respect these values, get the F out. Now, as I said before, laws against intimidation, desecration of war memorials or monuments, hiding your identity, turning protests into riots, speaking in favor of banned or proscribed organizations, these things have always been against the law. But for some reason, the Met Police up until this point had been powerless to enforce these laws. Why that is, your guess is as good as mine. But when something like this comes from the office of the Prime Minister, then it means someone is watching these developments very, very closely. And let me tell all my dear fellow Islamists, especially living in England, that is not good news for you. People like me will keep highlighting your bad behavior. People like me will keep exposing your objectives and motives. We know you are not loyal to Britain or any of your Western adopted countries. We know that. We know what you want. Your loyalties lie with Islamism. You want to overthrow these governments and replace them with Sharia. Well, as long as I have a voice, I'm going to keep exposing you guys. Whether Rishi Sunak is going to be able to do this or not, that remains to be seen. Maybe he's doing this to win some brownie points leading up to the general elections coming up. Who knows? Should we get excited over this? Well, we should remain optimistic, but we should keep the pressure on. Just like Trump warned fellow Islamists in America that we're going to find you and deport you. Whether he'd be able to do that or not, that's a different question altogether. But coming from the highest office in the country means something. And trust me, that sends a strong signal to all these Islamists. They will have to re-strategize. They will have to go underground. They'll have to come up with new ways to spread the Islamist propaganda. But at least they won't be as brazen as they have been, which angers decent people like you and me. But one thing is for sure, that whatever we're doing, we need to keep doing. And these Islamists are shaking in their boots. They're running for the hills. They're bloody scared. They're scared, like the cowards that they are. It's all big talk. For the very first time, these Islamists are being pushed back. Now they're scared, and we cannot let up. So keep putting the pressure on. Keep doing what you're doing. Join Twitter or X, because that's where all the action is. Facebook and Instagram, they're useless. Twitter or X is the best platform to put pressure on these Islamists and even your politicians. So I hope you liked today's video. If you liked it, then hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to support my work, then you can be my patron by going to patreon.com/Sultan, where you can see this content before it is released to general public. And if you can't do that, then at least you can buy me a coffee. Links below on your screen. Until next time, ta-da. If you'd like to support my work, you can become my patron by going to patreon.com/Sultan, or you can simply buy me a coffee.